Have you ever wondered why your dreams don't manifest even though you think about them constantly? What if I told you it's not your thoughts, but your feelings that create your reality? In this video, you're about to discover the true power behind Neville Goddard's most transformative teaching. Feeling is the secret. Get ready to uncover the force that shapes your world from within. Years ago, when I first began to consciously apply the law, I found myself in desperate need of a transformation. My outer world was crumbling, finances thin, relationships strained, and doors seemed closed. I thought I had the right ideas, the right words, the right prayers, but nothing changed. One evening, in quiet meditation, something shifted. I imagined having already received what I desired. Not merely visualized it, but felt it. I entered the mood of the wish fulfilled and let that feeling flood every cell of my being. I rose from that chair no longer poor, no longer seeking, but possessing. And soon enough, the world responded. This is when I realized the eternal truth. Feeling is the secret. Not words, not logic, not even thought, but feeling. Because feeling is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, the unseen and the seen. Be there irrational. Feeling is the key to every manifestation, because the power of imagination lies not in its form, but in its emotional reality. Let us now understand the mechanics of this inner alchemy. To manifest anything, you must understand how to manifest using feeling. Thought is only the blueprint. Emotion is the cement that holds the structure of your future. It is not what you want that you attract. It is what you feel yourself to be. If you desire success, you must feel successful now. If you long for love, you must feel lovable now. This is why all true manifestation techniques begin in the heart, not the mind. The mind may argue, but the feeling convinces. If you dwell in the assumption that something already exists and assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you have already created it in the unseen. You do not wait to believe once the evidence appears. You believe first, and the evidence conforms to that belief. This is the power of belief and imagination combined. Feeling is belief in motion. You must understand that imagination creates reality, not by accident, but by law. And when that imagination is lit with emotional fire, when you see your desire and feel it to be real, it becomes so. This is not fantasy. This is divine causation. This is your power. Do not ask whether it will come. That very question means you're not dwelling in the end. Instead, live in the assumption, for the world is simply a mirror reflecting your inner conviction. Let your spiritual awakening through imagination become your daily practice. Let your inner conversations be saturated with the tone of completion. You were never meant to hope vaguely. You were meant to feel deliberately. This is how you align with emotional alignment for manifestation. Feelings are not side effects of experience. They are the authors of it. So tonight, when you close your eyes, do not pray as a beggar. Pray as a creator. Begin to feel the state you desire until you are lost in its scent, its touch, its mood. This is how to live in the end. And when you awaken tomorrow, you will not be the same person. The world will conform not to what you think, but to what you felt to be true. You are the operant power. You are the one who decides when and what to create, not by force, but by assumption. There is no fate except what you feel to be real now. Therein lies the great secret. Everything begins in the unseen. You are not the puppet of circumstance, you are the author of it. But most do not know how they are writing the script. They imagine a thing, yes, but only in the vaguest outlines. They say, I want more money, I want love, I want healing, but they never enter the feeling of having it. They stand at the gates of their desires and never walk in. Desire without feeling is like a body without life. It lies motionless, unformed, and powerless to influence the world. But the moment you clothe your desire in feeling, when you begin to feel what it would be like were it already yours, you have awakened the law. Now the creative process begins. You have moved from wishing to becoming. The world reflects what you feel yourself to be, not what you say you want, not what you visualize as a distant dream, but what you inwardly accept as true now. This is the foundation of all true manifestation. You do not manifest by repeating empty affirmations or imagining images disconnected from your emotions. You manifest when your inner world becomes saturated with the emotional certainty that your desire is already fulfilled. Let us take an example. A man desires success. He pictures himself wealthy, but deep inside he feels lack. He tries to overcome this by repeating words, by acting as though he believes. But the feeling remains. He still identifies as someone without. As long as the feeling contradicts the vision, the feeling will win. For feeling is the law. Feeling is what impresses the subconscious. Feeling is what creates. But let us suppose he takes a different path. Instead of merely picturing money or success, he begins to feel what it would be like if he were already the successful man. He feels the confidence, the peace, the joy. He walks through his day with the inner tone of success. He acts not to convince the world, but because he is already convinced within. He no longer needs proof. He becomes the proof. This shift is subtle, but it is everything. It is the difference between imagining from the desire and imagining toward it. To imagine toward a thing is to acknowledge that it is still far away. To imagine from it is to claim that it is already here. When you imagine from the state of your wish fulfilled, you begin to feel differently. Your inner conversations change. Your reactions change. Your sense of self shifts, and the world, which is only a mirror, must follow. Your feelings are the key to every lock you wish to open, and yet many try to pick the lock with thought alone. They forget that the subconscious does not respond to words. It responds to the emotional weight those words carry. It is not enough to say, I am successful, if you feel like a failure. You must find a way to feel success now. That feeling becomes the prayer, the cause, the seed. When you learn to use feeling, you move beyond effort. You enter flow. You no longer try to make things happen. You allow them to happen because you already are the person to whom they happen. You do not chase the outer, you become the inner. And the outer must mirror back the new state. The great challenge then is not the world, it is your willingness to feel differently, to let go of the familiar feeling of lack and to dwell in the unfamiliar feeling of abundance, to step out of the emotion of longing and into the mood of fulfillment. It may feel unnatural at first, but persist. Stay with the new feeling. Let it become your dwelling place. All transformation begins with feeling. It is the furnace where the new self is forged. It is the foundation upon which every visible change is built. If you want to change your world, change what you feel about yourself, not with force, not with resistance, but by entering the feeling of the new you and resting there. This is how you manifest using feeling. This is how you move from hoping to knowing, from waiting to receiving, from imagining to becoming. You have only one task: to feel your wish fulfilled now, and to let that feeling become the atmosphere of your life. You do not need to beg. You need only to feel. For feeling is the secret. And in feeling, all things are made alive. The moment you feel it real, the law begins to act. The universe bends to the command of inner certainty. Your work is not to force the outer, but to align the inner. So I say again, to manifest anything, you must understand how to manifest using feeling. And once you feel it, you become it. And once you become it, the world cannot help but show you who you are. Every creation begins as an idea, but the idea on its own is not yet a living thing. It is a sketch, an outline drawn in the sands of consciousness. It holds form, yes, but no power. The thought of wealth, the image of health, the desire for love, these are the mental frameworks upon which you begin to build. But what gives these structures life, what makes them endure and take shape in your world, is not the thought. It is the feeling behind it. Thought without emotion is like drawing a home on paper and expecting to live in it. You may design the most beautiful dream with your mind, but unless it is set in motion by feeling, it will remain forever unreal. Feeling is what hardens the blueprint into reality. It is what makes the invisible visible, the abstract real. Consider your mind as the architect. It drafts the desire, envisions the structure, outlines the experience. But the architect cannot build alone. It needs the builder, the feeling, to take those plans and pour the foundation. Without the builder, the house remains an idea. It is never lived in. It never becomes a home. The mind says, I want. The feeling says, I have. And only the latter brings forth creation. This is why you may think about your goals every day and see no change. You revisit them mentally, you speak of them, you even pray for them, but if your inner emotional tone contradicts the image, if your mood is one of doubt, of lack of waiting, then the blueprint is never built. The structure remains incomplete. Feeling is not a byproduct of experience, it is the cause. It is the cement that sets your future into motion. You do not feel happy because life brings you joy. You experience joy because you've allowed yourself to dwell in the feeling of it before it arrives. You do not feel abundant because the money appears. The money appears because you have accepted the inner condition of abundance as real. The subconscious mind, the builder of all form, responds not to your logic but to your feeling. It accepts whatever emotion you repeat and assumes it as fact. And from that assumption it builds. It does not judge whether a feeling is good or bad, desired or undesired. It only builds what you emotionally inhabit. This is why fear manifests, not because we want to suffer, but because we feel suffering as real before it arrives. The subconscious does not question our emotional states. It simply fulfills them. This is why sustained joy, gratitude, peace, and confidence become powerful agents of creation. They tell the subconscious, this is who I am, and the world obeys. Emotion is your command. It is the tool you use to impress your inner self with the reality of your wish. You must therefore become deeply aware of how you feel when you imagine. It is not enough to see yourself with your desire. You must feel yourself in possession of it. You must saturate your imagination with a tone of fulfillment. Every time you return to the same image, do not merely repeat the picture. Return to the feeling. Let it deepen. Let it grow richer. Let it become so natural that you begin to forget the old state. This is when change begins to crystallize. When the new feeling becomes more familiar than the old one, your future begins to reassemble around it. Soul paints the vision, but emotion anchors it. Without this anchor, the vision drifts. It cannot hold. You may think of your goal and feel excitement once, but that is not enough. You must persist in the emotional acceptance of it. You must dwell in the mood of already being the person you desire to be. That mood, when maintained, will rewrite your identity, and the world will echo your new name. This process is not effortful in the way the world teaches effort. It is not about struggling or striving. It is about surrendering into the reality of the wish fulfilled, about choosing to live from the end, not toward it. To feel that it is already done, and to let that feeling become your resting place. There is no creation without emotion, no fulfillment without feeling. The future is not formed by thought alone, but by thought clothed in conviction. When your inner world becomes rich with the feeling of already having your desire, you have laid the foundation, you have poured the cement. Now the form must rise. So when next you imagine, do not ask if your image is perfect. Ask if your feeling is true. Do not seek to manipulate the outer world. Seek instead to master the inner world, for once the feeling is fixed, the form will follow. Your destiny is not shaped by the thoughts that pass through your mind. It is shaped by the emotions you dwell in. If you want a new future, lay down a new feeling. Let it become the cement of your life. And from that foundation, the structure of your new world will rise. The great misunderstanding of life lies in the belief that wanting alone is enough. People spend years longing, hoping, wishing for better health, greater wealth, a loving partner, or a fulfilled purpose. They assume that desire, in its intensity, will summon the change. But desire without identification is impotent. It generates longing, not fulfillment. For you do not attract what you want. You attract what you are conscious of being. This is the spiritual law behind all manifestation. Your reality reflects your state of consciousness. Not your public behavior, not your words, not even your daily rituals, but your deep inner feeling of self. If you persist in feeling yourself to be unworthy, you will repel the very things you say you want. If you secretly feel broken, your outer world must mirror that fracture. It cannot be otherwise. Wanting something means it is still separate from you. But when you feel yourself to be it, when you assume the identity of already having been or doing the thing, you collapse the gap. Creation is not something that happens in time. It is the arrangement of states. And when you embody a new state of being, the world reconfigures around it. The key then is not to amplify desire, but to shift identity. You must stop reaching toward your dreams like a distant star and begin inhabiting them like your own skin. To feel yourself to be wealthy is to live in the world with the inner security and calm of one who already possesses. To feel yourself to be loved is to move through your day as one who no longer seeks approval. The feeling changes you and the change becomes visible. This is not about pretending. It is about accepting. You are not deceiving yourself. You are revealing your true self, because every state you could ever desire already exists within you. You are not becoming something new. You are selecting what has always been available, and feeling is the instrument of selection. Every time you say, I want, you reinforce the separation between you and the thing. But when you say inwardly, I am, you unite with it. You give it life. You breathe it into the present, and this present feeling becomes the seed of experience. The outer is always a shadow of the inner, and the shadow cannot appear until the substance is formed. The difficulty is that most are unconsciously loyal to their old self-concept. They want wealth but feel poor. They want love but feel invisible. They want success but identify with failure. And they try to overcome these inner states with action, with strategy, with striving. But all action is the echo of state. You cannot run from your identity. You must transform it. The change happens within. You do not need to wait for circumstances to justify a new feeling. You must be bold enough to adopt it now, to step into the feeling of being even when the evidence says otherwise. Because the world does not lead the mind leads the world. What you feel yourself to be inwardly, the world must reflect eventually. When you understand this, you stop asking, when will it come, and start asking, who am I now? This question reveals the key to all manifestation. You must take your attention away from the thing itself and place it on the state of consciousness that would naturally express it. If you were already the person you long to be, how would you feel? That feeling is the doorway. Walk through it. Persistence is the secret. One emotional acceptance is a spark, but persistence in that feeling is the fire that reshapes your life. You must return again and again to the new state, especially when the outer world tempts you back to the old. Ignore appearances. They are echoes of past assumptions. Remain faithful to your new feeling, and the echo will fade. This is the sacred discipline, to feel yourself into a new version of reality, to move beyond sight and evidence and live in the truth of your desired state. You do not chase love, you feel loved. You do not pursue freedom, you feel free. This feeling is the magnet, the cause, the hidden current drawing the visible to you. And the transformation is not in what you have, but in who you are. Because once you feel yourself to be something different, you act differently, speak differently, and move differently. The world does not resist, it adjusts. Your new identity summons a new reality. You must understand, the universe is not responding to your cries. It is responding to your inner conviction. to what you accept as true about yourself. If you feel yourself to be lacking, even in prayer, you perpetuate lack. But if you enter the mood of already being fulfilled, even in silence, the law begins to unfold. So the next time you desire something, do not ask how to get it. Ask how you would feel if you were already it. Then live in that feeling, not for a moment, but until it becomes natural, until the old you fades like a forgotten dream and the new you feels like home. Because it is not what you want that you attract, it is what you feel yourself to be. And once that inner conviction is made real, the outer world cannot help but obey. When you begin to awaken to the truth of creation, you quickly see that the source of your reality is not thought alone, but the feeling that animates it. The common teaching of the world is that everything begins in the intellect. You are taught to think logically, to reason your way into a solution, to follow strategies laid out like steps on a ladder. But the ladder of logic can only climb so high. It cannot reach the unseen, because manifestation is not the work of intellect, it is the work of feeling, of the inner atmosphere of the heart. The mind may suggest 1,000 outcomes, but it is the heart that decides which one becomes flesh. The heart does not speak in logic. It speaks in conviction, in atmosphere, in vibration. It speaks in what you feel to be true. And what you feel to be true becomes your reality. Not because you've analyzed it, but because you've embodied it. This is why all true manifestation techniques, the ones that endure and produce results, begin with emotion. They begin not with what you think you are, but with what you feel yourself to be. The mind may say, I am wealthy, but if the heart feels lack, you will remain in poverty. The mind may say, I am loved, but if the heart feels abandoned, you will encounter rejection. The law does not respond to the words of the mouth. It responds to the whispers of the inner man. You must begin to see your heart as the womb of creation. It is where your future is formed, nourished, and born. Every seed you place in the mind must be carried in the heart to live. You cannot simply entertain a thought. You must fall in love with it. You must feel it, nurture it, let it grow. When the heart accepts a thing as real, it becomes inevitable. This is why you must move beyond thinking about what you want and begin to feel as though it is already yours. The techniques that ask you to visualize, to affirm, to script, these are not complete until they touch the heart. Visualization is the skeleton, but feeling is the breath of life. You must feel the reality of what you imagine until it becomes indistinguishable from your memory, until the heart claims it as a lived experience. And what the heart claims, the world must reflect. The mistake so many make is trying to manifest from the head. They analyze their desires, measure the obstacles, weigh the probabilities. But the law does not bend to analysis. It bends to assumption. The heart does not calculate. It knows. And when you move from knowing rather than analyzing, you become magnetic to your desire. To live from the heart means to move through the world as though your desire were already accomplished. It means to walk in the joy of your answered prayer, to rest in the confidence of already having received. This is not imagination as escape. It is imagination as embodiment. When you feel the wish fulfilled, you are no longer seeking, you are expressing. The heart does not seek, it expresses. And expression is the signature of manifestation. Begin then with the feeling. Do not ask how it will come or when it will arrive. Ask instead, what would I feel if I were now the person I long to be? Then answer with your whole being, not just in thought, but in breath, in posture, in tone. Let the heart speak before the mind responds. Let feeling lead. For when you let the heart lead, the mind falls into harmony. Thought becomes the servant of feeling, not its master. You begin to think from your desire rather than of it. You imagine from fulfillment rather than toward it. And this shift from head to heart is the axis upon which your world turns. Think of the heart not just as emotion, but as alignment. It is the place where your desire and your identity meet. When you feel your desire to be already true, you fuse the two into one, and from that union, reality is born. You do not need to convince the heart, you only need to surrender to the feeling, because the heart is always willing to believe. It does not require evidence, it requires sincerity. When you sincerely feel your desire as real, the heart accepts it. And once accepted, it must express itself in form. So the next time you close your eyes to imagine, do not focus solely on the image. Focus on the inner climate. Ask yourself, do I feel as the person who already has this? And if the answer is no, persist until the answer is yes. For the moment your heart accepts the state, the wheels of creation begin to turn. Every technique is meaningless unless it touches the heart. Words without feeling are empty. Actions without emotion are ritual. But a single moment of sincere, concentrated feeling of the wish fulfilled is worth more than years of empty repetition. Because all true manifestation begins not in the mind, but in the heart. And when the heart is moved, the world must move with it. To dwell in the assumption is to live in the end before the end becomes visible. It is to move through life with a quiet certainty that what is not yet seen is already yours. This is not mere faith. It is the creative act itself. You do not wait for confirmation from the senses. You become the confirmation. You become the proof of the thing you desire by assuming the feeling that it is already fulfilled. The unseen is not distant. It is here and now, vibrating just beneath the surface of your current awareness. All things exist, not in the future, but in the eternal now. And when you select a new state of consciousness and dwell in it, you call forth from the invisible that which matches your assumption. The outer world then rearranges itself to reflect your inner conviction. People often confuse creation with time. They believe that if they ask and wait long enough, eventually the thing will come. But time is not the creator, feeling is. What you feel to be true now is the cause. The appearance in time is only the delayed echo. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you do not make the future happen. You select a present reality in the unseen that must externalize itself in due course. The assumption is not wishful thinking. It is identification. You no longer imagine the desire as something apart from you. You become it. And in that becoming, you have already created. You may not see the form immediately, but do not mistake delay for denial. The seed has been planted. It is now growing in silence. What you assume with feeling becomes substance in its own appointed hour. This is the great law. That which you feel yourself to be, you become. When you dwell in a state, you embody it. You make it your dwelling place, your emotional home. And like any home, you begin to decorate it, speak from it, act from it. You no longer look for signs. You are the sign. The world does not lead you to your assumption. Your assumption leads the world to you. If you were to assume that you are now the person you long to be, wealthy, healthy, loved, secure, and you truly felt it to be real, you would begin to think and act in harmony with that feeling. These thoughts and actions would not be forced. They would flow naturally from your new identity, and the world would comply, because the world is only responding to the inner tone you broadcast. The unseen is not empty. It is full of infinite realities, infinite versions of you. Each one is accessed by assumption. You do not create these realities. You choose them. And the means of choice is feeling. When you feel yourself into a state, you shift timelines. You step into a parallel where the thing you desire is already fact. You do not need to beg for change. You need only to assume it. The man who assumes he is successful, even when there is no visible proof, carries himself differently. His inner posture changes. His tone changes. His energy changes. These changes are subtle, but they are signals. And the universe always responds to signals. You may say, but I feel like I'm lying to myself. I don't yet see the change. That is because you have spent years dwelling in the old assumption. It has become familiar, habitual, automatic. The new assumption feels strange only because it is new, not because it is untrue. Persist in it, rest in it, let it become natural. The moment it does, it must manifest. The law is simple. Assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not once, not twice, but consistently. Live in the state. Do not touch it and retreat. Abide in it. When doubts arise, and they will, return to the feeling. Let the feeling of already having overwhelm the appearance of not yet having. In this way, you override the senses and impress the deeper self. Every great change begins in the unseen. You must first believe it before you can see it. But belief is not passive. It is the active assumption of already being. When you say, I am, you invoke creation. When you say, I will be, you postpone it. Stay in the present tense. Speak the language of completion. Even in the silence of your own mind, refuse to entertain lack. If you catch yourself worrying, return to the state. Remember, the assumption is not a thought. It is a dwelling. It is a place from which you live. If you lived in a palace, you would not imagine cold and hunger. If you live in the feeling of wealth, you will not fear poverty. The inner world shapes the outer. So take the time each day to rest in the feeling of already being. Feel it deeply, richly, sincerely. Let it become your new identity, not something you visit, but something you wear. And the moment you wear it long enough, it wears you. The world responds not to what you want, but to what you are. And you are what you feel yourself to be. Therefore, to dwell in the assumption is to create in the unseen. It is to claim what is yours before the world confirms it. And when the world finally does, you will not be surprised. You will know that it came not by chance, but by law. The world teaches you to trust only what you can verify. It demands proof before acceptance, signs before surrender, results before belief. But this is not the way creation works. The law of consciousness does not respond to outward evidence. It creates it. The outer is not the cause of your belief. It is the result of it. You do not believe because you see. You see because you believe. To wait for evidence is to confess that you do not believe yet. And if you do not believe, you are not in the state. And if you are not in the state, you cannot experience the fruits of that state. Belief is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. It is not a reaction. It is a choice. It is not a reward for obedience. It is the seed from which all manifestation grows. Think of a farmer planting in barren soil. He does not first demand the harvest before planting the seed. He plants, waters, waits, and knows with certainty that in time the seed will rise. His faith in the process is not dependent on seeing the plant on the first day. He acts from belief, and belief governs the season. So it is with the law of assumption. You plant your belief not because you see the outcome, but because you know that the outcome depends on the seed. Belief is not passive acceptance. It is active embodiment. To believe is to feel the truth of your desire so completely that you no longer look for confirmation outside yourself. You do not ask, is it working? You know it is. You do not check conditions for validation. You walk in the end knowing that all things are now working together to bring the invisible into view. The problem is that most people look to the world for signs before they permit themselves to believe. They say, I'll feel rich once the money's in the account, or I'll feel loved once someone chooses me. But this is reverse causation. The feeling must come first. The world is your mirror, not your maker. It cannot reflect back what you have not already assumed. Belief is the great initiator of change. The moment you accept something as true in your imagination, you begin to live from it. You see the world differently. You interpret events through the lens of the new state. And slowly, the world begins to echo your inner conviction. It is not magic. It is law. You must understand that evidence is always lagging behind belief. The world does not instantly shape itself the moment you assume a new idea. It takes time, repetition, persistence. But it always conforms. The law cannot fail. The only question is whether you will continue to believe even when appearances seem to deny your assumption. And this is where the creative act truly lies. Not in imagining once, but in living from that imagination, even when the world appears unchanged. The test is not in whether you can picture the end result, but whether you can remain faithful to it through storms, through silence, through delay. This is the mark of a true creator. Belief does not require effort. It requires alignment. You do not have to force yourself to believe. You only have to feel what it would be like were it true. Let that feeling guide your thoughts, your decisions, your reactions. When the feeling becomes natural, belief becomes inevitable. And when belief is sustained, the world must yield. It is also important to recognize that the world you see today is simply the shadow of yesterday's beliefs. If you want to change tomorrow, you must change your assumption today. Waiting for the world to improve before you change your self-concept is like waiting for the reflection to smile before you smile at the mirror. Do not ask for signs. Be the sign. Do not seek evidence. Be the evidence. The person who assumes wealth, health, love, or joy before it appears begins to radiate those qualities. They move differently, speak differently, carry themselves with quiet authority. And the world responds, not because it is being manipulated, but because it is obedient. If you begin to believe in yourself now, as one who already has the thing desired, then you begin to live from that belief, and all your actions become expressions of it. That belief conditions your world more powerfully than any action you take without it. Action alone is outer motion. Belief is inner alignment. The former may produce results. The latter creates transformation. It is not enough to think about your desire. You must believe it is already done. You must talk to yourself as one who knows. You must rise each morning and put on the feeling of the wish fulfilled like a garment. You must walk through your day with a quiet assurance that what you have assumed is now working behind the scenes. That belief will shape your experience. The law responds to belief, not to effort. The universe rearranges itself to mirror your inner certainty. The moment you stop waiting for proof and start living as though your assumption were already fact, you step into a new world. And that world, though invisible today, is already forming. It is yours, not because you earned it, but because you believed it into being. So remember, you do not wait to believe once the evidence appears. You believe first, and the evidence appears as the shadow of that belief. Imagination is not a fleeting daydream or idle fantasy. It is the womb of creation, the divine faculty through which all things come into being. It does not operate by chance, nor does it require approval from the senses. It works by law, eternal, immutable, and exact. And the moment you recognize that imagination is the creative force, the very architect of your reality, you begin to move from passivity to power. Everything you now see in your world, your relationships, your surroundings, your conditions, originated first in the unseen realm of imagination. Whether you were aware of it or not, you imagined it into existence. Perhaps you did so unconsciously, through worry, through fear, through repeated mental rehearsals of what you didn't want. Or perhaps you imagined through deliberate intention, visualizing a desire until it bloomed. But either way, the law was operating. There is no exception to this truth. As within, so without. The outer world is only a reflection of the inner, and the inner is shaped entirely by imagination. This means you are not reacting to the world, you are generating it, not occasionally, always. The law does not sleep. It does not pause. It mirrors faithfully the images and moods impressed upon the subconscious through feeling-infused imagination. Now, to understand that imagination creates reality by law is to know that every imaginative act must result in some form of external expression. The intensity, consistency, and emotional charge of the image determines how swiftly and accurately it appears in your world. You are not dealing with a whimsical tool, but with divine precision. It is governed not by emotion alone, but by focused assumption, by the belief that what you imagine is already true. Most people use imagination against themselves. They relive failures, rehearse arguments, picture worst-case scenarios. They say, but I'm only thinking. Yet each thought charged with emotion is an act of creation. The subconscious does not differentiate between real and imagined experience. It responds to feeling, and feeling flows most naturally from what you vividly imagine. So the question is not whether you're imagining, you are. The question is, what are you imagining? What inner scenes are you rehearsing? What inner conversations are you entertaining? What emotional tones are you cultivating daily? Because these are not private experiences, they are creative instructions issued to the fabric of reality. To imagine deliberately is to assume responsibility for your world. It is to step into authorship, and to do so requires more than idle wishful thinking. It demands inner discipline. It demands that you withdraw your attention from the appearances of lack and direct it to the unseen certainty of the wish fulfilled. You must dwell in the end, not because it feels logical, but because it is law. Imagination works best when it is specific, felt, and repeated. When you imagine, enter the scene fully. Let it possess you. See the world not as you wish it would be, but as it already is, in the assumption that your desire has been realized. Feel the texture of the environment, hear the sounds, sense the responses of others around you. Make the experience real, and your subconscious will take it as fact. This is how you impress the law. You do not beg, you do not try, you do not strive, you accept the vision as done. And once accepted, the law begins to operate. Circumstances move, people change, events unfold, not because you force them, but because the world must express what you have assumed within. It is essential to remember that the law does not care whether you use it for good or ill. It responds to the dominant feeling behind your images. If you dwell in fear, you will materialize what you fear. If you dwell in joy, joy will unfold. The law is impersonal. It serves your inner conviction. It is not a judge. It is a mirror. Therefore, become conscious of your use of imagination. Train it. Use it constructively. Turn away from appearances that contradict your desire and persist in the vision of what you want. Not just occasionally, but habitually. Let it become your dwelling place. Because what you imagine consistently with feeling becomes your environment, your relationships, your body, your bank account. This truth is not new. It is ancient. And it is written into the very structure of existence. Imagination is the substance from which all things are formed. When rightly used, it can heal the body, elevate the soul, and reorder life entirely. But you must understand it is not random. It is lawful. If you imagine chaos, chaos comes. If you imagine peace, peace will find you. What you accept in imagination is accepted in your reality. That is the power you carry. Not just the power to observe the world, but to shape it. So understand now, deeply and irrevocably, that imagination creates reality, not as a metaphor, not as a possibility, but as a law. And you are the channel through which that law expresses itself. Creation does not begin with your hands, it begins with your inner eye. Long before any physical result is born, the conception has taken place within imagination. And it is not the mere image that carries power, but the feeling of reality assigned to that image. You may see a beautiful dream in your mind 1,000 times, but if you never feel it to be true, if you never accept it emotionally, it remains a fantasy untouched by the law. But the moment you see it and feel it to be real, you have moved from fantasy into creation. There is a profound difference between wishing and creating. The world is full of those who wish. They hope for things, they yearn, they speak about their desires as distant goals, but wishing is powerless without emotional possession. To wish for something is to confess its absence, but to feel the reality of it, to feel it as though it were already true, is to call it into being. This feeling is the root of all manifestation. You do not attract what you want. You do not attract what you admire. You attract what you believe is already yours. And belief is not a matter of repeated words. It is a matter of accepted feeling. You become the thing you feel. The image you consistently clothe in emotion becomes the self you express. Many wonder why their visualizations fail. They build magnificent castles in the air, yet they feel nothing. Or worse, they visualize with doubt, imagining a future they hope for while simultaneously entertaining fear that it may never arrive. That inner contradiction creates nothing. The law does not respond to mental pictures alone. It responds to emotional conviction. It is not what you see in imagination. It is what you accept as real in feeling that creates. When you see your desire in the mind's eye and combine it with the feeling that it is already accomplished, you initiate an invisible chain reaction. You activate a law that is exact, dependable, and impersonal. The creative substance of reality begins to mold itself around your conviction. The people, events, and circumstances necessary to fulfill your assumption are drawn to you, not because you have aligned with them in consciousness. This is not fantasy. It is not escapism. It is divine craftsmanship. It is the sacred way in which all things have ever come into being, from the architecture of cities to the composition of music, from the healing of the body to the finding of love. Everything begins with an image, and everything becomes real through the emotional certainty that the image is true. Do not concern yourself with whether it seems logical. The law of creation is not limited by logic. It is moved by belief. Many will tell you that what you imagine cannot come to pass, that the world does not work that way. But they are only reflecting their own assumptions. You must dare to feel your dream into reality, even when nothing around you supports it, especially when nothing around you supports it. Creation is not reaction. It is initiation. You are not waiting for the world to permit your vision. You are giving the world the blueprint it must follow. The world is clay in the hands of your sustained assumption, and your assumption is made alive through feeling. To feel your desire is to own it, to possess it inwardly. You may not yet touch it with your hands, but you touch it with your soul. And the moment that inner touch becomes vivid, real, natural, the outer manifestation is assured. You no longer ask if it will come. You know it has already begun. This knowing does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers. It comes in the form of peace, of quiet expectation, of a subtle shift in how you walk through the world. You no longer seek signs. You are the sign. You no longer crave proof. You carry the proof in your tone, your energy, your being. Feel it real. This is your only task. Return again and again to the end you desire, not as a dreamer looking forward, but as a creator remembering. Let it be so familiar that the old reality begins to feel foreign. Let it live in you and you will see it live around you. All great transformations begin with feeling. The moment you see your desire and feel it to be real, it is already done. This is not wishful thinking. This is how creation occurs. Not through action first, but through assumption. Not through effort, but through embodiment. The law is clear and simple. What you feel yourself to be, you become. So when you feel your desire to be real, you are no longer hoping, you are becoming. It is in that feeling that the seed is planted. And once planted, you need not dig it up in worry. You need only to rest in the knowing that it is growing. When the harvest arrives, you will not be surprised. You will recognize it as the mirror of your sustained feeling. So the question is not whether you are imagining. The question is whether you are feeling your imagination to be true. That feeling is the difference between fantasy and creation. And that feeling is the secret. It continues in his signature tone, elevated, immersive, and educational, with no subheadings, no direct mention of his name, and a closing rhythm that seals the message emotionally and spiritually. You are not a victim of chance. You are not subject to the winds of fate, nor are you at the mercy of circumstance. You are the operant power. All that you behold, good, bad, desirable, or otherwise, was first imagined and then felt into being. The world you experience is not the cause but the echo. You are not here to observe reality, you are here to author it. The secret has always been feeling. Not emotion alone, but sustained inner conviction that what you desire is already true. When you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and dwell in that state, you ignite a creative law that cannot fail. The universe does not resist, it reflects. It reshapes itself, reorders itself, and conforms to the inner architecture you have built in imagination. You have been given the tool of creation, your imagination, and the key that turns it your feeling. Use it deliberately. Use it with reverence. Use it not to escape the world, but to transform it. Every moment you return to your desired state, every time you feel yourself to be the person you wish to become, you move closer to its fulfillment. And the day will come when it is no longer something you imagine, but something you remember. Let this be the truth you carry forward. Nothing comes from without. All is within. You are the dreamer, and a dream made flesh. So dream wisely, feel deeply, and walk boldly in the assumption that all you desire is already yours, because it is. And that indeed is the secret.